Hi, and welcome to part 3 of the FracTroniX Finalising, Mixing and Mastering course. In this part of the course, we'll focus on getting the mix sounding tight before we move on to mastering in part 4. Okay, so we'll mainly be focusing on just checking that all of the levels are nicely balanced, checking that everything's kind of sitting in the right place in the stereo field. We'll be making a few minor tweaks to some of the EQ settings on some of the sounds, and possibly tweak some of the compression settings, and also just make sure that all of the effects are at the right kind of level and work at whichever points they're at. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is just run through the whole track, and I'm just going to kind of point out any parts where I think that a sound is too loud. And what we're looking for is any particular spikes where a sound suddenly jumps out at you. And you'll notice this sounds slightly different to how it did in the previous part, and that's because I've removed the limiter that I had running on the master bus. If you have any kind of dynamics processing or even EQ or anything like that running on the master, you're not going to hear your mix as it should be. We just want to hear it naked before it goes into any of that mastering stuff. That's the best way you can listen out for any spikes or anything that's too quiet or anything that's too loud, basically. Okay, so I'll just play it through from the start, and I'm going to make a few notes as I'm going. Okay, so the things I picked up on, basically I think the snare is slightly too quiet. I think it could come up just by maybe 1 or 2 dB. It's just getting a bit lost in the mix with all the other things that we've added. There's this ride bell that comes in at bar 65, which I thought could do with being slightly louder. This one here. Sounds a bit dry as well. It might be nice for some delay on it, so we'll come on to that in a second. Also, the effects that we added earlier on, I think maybe that could come down just by 2 dB perhaps. Also, I noticed that there was a bass note which kind of hangs on for too long in the breakdown, but we'll have a listen to that and see if we can rectify that in a moment. Also, the main bass kind of needs a bit more saturation in the low mids, I think, just to make it cut through a bit more in those frequencies. Okay, so I'll just move my notes to the side and go into the mix and correct these issues that I picked up on. So first off, the snare drum, and it's this snare we're talking about. Just needs to come up ever so slightly. Okay, so we'll just literally bring that up by 2 dB as the mix is playing. Okay, 1.4 dB seems to be about right. And we'll just jump around to a few different sections of the track to make sure it still sounds okay. Okay, I think that sounds good. So back to this ride bell. Let's have a listen to this. It's really cool contrasting sounds. I think it needs to come up a bit. It needs something to kind of bring it out some more. Probably don't need to EQ it, but I think maybe bring up the level and possibly add a delay or something. Just listen to it in the drums mix. So maybe just bring it up by 2 dB. Also, I think I'm just going to apply a low cut at around 800 Hz, or maybe even 1K, just to remove the lower frequencies from this specific sample. Okay, just makes it a bit more airy and a bit clearer. So now I can bring it up another couple of dB without it clashing with any of the other drums. Okay, that sounds good. So I'll also add some effects, just so you can hear the effects as well. I'll just solo all of the drums. It's going to the large reverb already, but I think it could sound good with a long delay as well. Not quite that much. Once again, roll it back to about -10 or something. Okay, that sounds interesting in the drums mix. Now let's try it in the context of the whole mix. Yeah, that's quite an interesting effect. It's quite rhythmic. Let's just take the send level down a few more dB so it doesn't jump out at you quite so much. Possibly try switching to the other delay. In fact, yeah, that one kind of works a bit better. Okay, so that's our ride bell sitting nicely in the mix. So make sure it works in this section as well. In fact, it might be nice to just pan it slightly more to the right. Kind of look at it from a drummer's perspective and think, where would the ride cymbal be on the kit? Back here. Okay, now there's also this open hi-hat. Now I think that could possibly be panned slightly to the left. And I mean very, very slightly. Once again, imagine you're sat behind a drum kit. The hi-hat's just above the snare drum and slightly to the left. So pan that left by about 10. Okay, now the other thing that I noticed was the new effects track that we've added seems to be a little bit too loud. So I just want to go in and take down the level of that whole channel. And I don't mean by very much, I think 1 dB would probably do it. Let's take it down to -9. Okay, so just making it a bit less intrusive and a bit more subtle and atmospheric. Okay, so we're pretty much there now. I think I'm happy with all of the levels, I'm happy with the compression settings, I'm happy with the general sound of the mix. I think if there's one thing that needs a bit of attention, it's the sort of low mids of the bass. It's not quite cutting through as much as it should be. So just try and fix that now with some EQ. So that particular sound there, it's got a really nice, clear, crispy top end, and the bottom end is there as well, but it's just kind of missing something in the mids. So just going to apply a channel EQ. I think maybe if we just kind of give it a boost around 200 Hz, that might do the job. Possibly bring up the tops a little. Okay, I think that should just about do it for that one. Finally, there's just this bass here, which needs to be a little bit more prominent in the mix. This kind of gradually slowing wobble bass here. So to really bring that one out in the mix, I'm just going to apply a compressor with the default settings. Okay, so that just brings it up. Okay, that's nice and clear now. Okay, so that's it for the mixing session. Now, I'm actually working on headphones at the moment, so what I'm going to do, what every good producer or sound engineer should do, I'm going to go away and just make sure that it sounds good on the monitors, and might make a couple more tweaks before we do the mastering session, but I'll let you know if I do make any tweaks. Okay, so I'll leave the track to play out now, and I'll see you in the final part.